All right, so Trump's back with even more tax plan ideas for 2024. And let me tell you, this time they might hit even closer to home for a lot of you.
Yeah, this isn't just some political hot potato. We're talking about potential real-world impacts on your wallet.
Exactly. And you know, we love to dig deep, so that's what we're doing today, going beyond those flashy headlines to see how these proposals could actually play out.
Right. Got to cut through the noise and see what's what.
Absolutely. And we've got a good mix of sources to help us do that today.
Oh, yeah. What are we looking at?
So we've got some in-depth analysis from the Tax Foundation, and then we're going to balance that out with a report from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. They always have a different take, which is good.
It's good to get those different perspectives, for sure.
Oh, and of course, we can't forget about the court of public opinion. Right.
Got to see what the people are saying.
Exactly. We've got some juicy Reddit threads lined up, our moderate politics and our politics. Always a good time.
Those are always lively. I'm interested to see what folks are saying.
Yeah, and speaking of what people are saying, one of those Reddit threads is buzzing about how Trump's approval rating is actually going up. Some polls even have him breaking 50%.
Is that right? I haven't seen those yet.
Yeah, and apparently the economy and border control are big factors driving that trend.
Interesting. Makes you wonder if his tax plan is playing into that perception at all.
It does. So let's jump right into it. The Tax Foundation report, give us the rundown. What's the gist of Trump's plan this time around?
Well, imagine this, right? He basically took his 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that TCJA everyone was talking about, threw it on a copy machine.
Hit and large. Yeah.
Exactly. Enlarge. Print. Let's do this.
So we're talking TCJA, but bigger, making those individual and business tax cuts permanent?
You got it. But he doesn't stop there. We're talking about potentially slashing the corporate tax rate even further, from 21% down to, get this, maybe even 15%.
15%? Wow. Okay, that's a pretty drastic cut. What would be the impact of something like that?
Well, the goal is that corporations would have more money to invest to hire more people. At least that's the idea.
Right, right.
But the big question is, does that actually trickle down to workers? Or does it just end up benefiting those at the top?
That's always the question with these big tax cuts, and it's something we'll definitely be unpacking more later on. But first, tell me a bit more about these cuts. What does it mean to make the TCJA permanent? Some folks might not remember all the specifics.
Yeah, so the TCJA, it was passed back in 2017, and it really shook things up. It lowered individual income tax rates across the board, doubled the standard deduction, and made some changes to the child tax credit.
Right, and I remember there was a lot of debate at the time about who really benefited from those changes.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something that's sure to come up again if Trump's plan gains any traction.
For sure. Okay, so we got the TCJA on steroids. What else is in this tax plan? Give me the juicy details.
Okay, so on top of those already substantial cuts, Trump is also suggesting making Social Security and tip income completely tax-free.
Whoa, 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 hold on. Tax-free Social Security. Tax-free tips. That's going to turn some heads.
Right. It sounds pretty good on the surface.
I mean, who wouldn't want that?
Exactly, but then it makes you wonder, where's all that money going to come from to make up for those lost tax revenues?
That's the thing. The government still needs money to, actually run things.
Precisely.
And speaking of running things, I can't help but notice a bit of a theme here. Big tax cuts, tax-free income. It's giving me some serious 2017 vibes.
Yeah, you're picking up on a pattern here.
Mm.
And the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, they're like, hold up. We've seen this before, and they are not afraid to say it.
So are we about to rewind the clock and have those same economic debates all over again? What's the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities saying about this?
Oh, they're not holding back. They're basically saying those 2017 tax cuts, the ones that were supposed to be such a game changer for the middle class, didn't quite work out that way. They say those cuts mostly benefited the wealthy and corporations.
Ah, so it's the trickle-down economics debate again. Cut taxes at the top, and the benefits will supposedly trickle down to everyone else.
Exactly. But the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, they're like, hello? Did anyone actually see any trickling? They're arguing that instead of trickling down, those 2017 cuts just threw gasoline on the national debt fire.
And without giving average workers the wage growth that was promised.
Exactly.
So we've got one side saying these tax cuts could jumpstart the economy, and the other side is waving a giant red flag based on what happened last time. Plus, we've got this whole other layer of potentially making Social Security and tip income tax-free. How would that even work?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. You see, a big chunk of government funding comes from taxing those income streams.
Right.
So if you suddenly make them tax-free, that's a massive hole in the budget. And then the question is, how do you fill that hole?
Because money doesn't just magically appear out of thin air.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where the tax foundation points to something we haven't talked about yet, tariffs.
Tariffs. Haven't heard that word in a while. What are tariffs again?
Okay, so imagine you want to buy, I don't know, a sweater from another country, right?
Mm.
A tariff is like an extra tax on that sweater that you have to pay the government because it was imported.
Okay, okay.
And Trump's plan involves cranking those tariffs way up, especially on goods coming in from China. We're talking bumping existing tariffs up to something like 60% and slapping a baseline tariff on basically everything imported.
Wow, 60%. So tariffs make those imported goods more expensive, which is supposed to encourage people to buy American-made products instead. But wouldn't that also mean, we'd be paying more for a lot of stuff?
That's the trade-off.
Huh.
The idea is that making those foreign goods pricier will protect American businesses and hopefully create more jobs here. But the flip side is that, yeah, you might end up paying more for everyday things, everything from clothes and gadgets to cars and groceries.
And isn't there a chance those other countries might retaliate with their own tariffs? Then what happens?
Exactly. It can easily backfire. And that's where the tax foundation gets really real. They're saying those tariffs could actually do more harm than good.
Like what? What are they saying?
They're talking about potentially shrinking the economy and actually making the national debt even worse, even with the tax cuts factored in.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this is complicated stuff. We've got tax cuts, potential tax-free income, tariffs, economic growth, the national debt. It's a lot to wrap your head around. Maybe we need to get out of the weeds here a bit and see what everyday people are saying about this. You mentioned some interesting Reddit threads.
Absolutely. Let's see what the virtual streets are saying. First up, we've got r/moderate politics, known for, being the more level-headed corner of Reddit.
So what are the moderates saying about all this talk of tax overhauls?
What's interesting is that the thread you shared wasn't really about the nitty-gritty of the tax plan itself. It was more about the whole vibe around it. A lot of users were saying that Trump's been laying low lately, and that might actually be helping him.
So less tweeting, fewer big rallies.
Exactly. Some folks were even saying this more presidential approach might be resonating with voters who weren't so keen on his style before.
Interesting. So the tax plan might not be the only thing boosting those poll numbers. His whole demeanor might be playing a part. What about that other thread? The one from our politics?
Ah, yes, our politics. Always a lively bunch over there. That thread was all about the national debt.
Yeah, the national debt. It's always a hot topic. Are people actually worried about it, or is it more of a political football?
Oh, it's a real concern for a lot of people, and this thread really showed that. It's been climbing for years, and there's a lot of finger-pointing about how to fix it.
Right.
Some folks were blaming those 2017 tax cuts, saying they just made it worse. Others were saying, hey, it's not just about the tax cuts. Look at government spending.
It's that classic question, what comes first, the spending or the tax cuts?
Exactly. And how do you even begin to untangle that mess? The truth is, there's no easy answer. But this Reddit thread, it really highlights how these decisions, they directly impact people's lives. We're not just talking about numbers on a spreadsheet here. This is about the future, about social programs, about how healthy the economy will be for our kids and grandkids.
It's about real people, real families trying to make ends meet.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds us that we can't just passively accept whatever politicians are telling us. We have to think critically, look at all sides of the issue, and ask tough questions.
So where does this all leave us? It's like we're looking at a puzzle where the pieces don't quite fit.
It's true. Economic policy is rarely simple, but we can try to connect some of these dots. Like we were saying, the tax foundation, they see the potential upside of those tax cuts, but they're really worried about those tariffs.
Yeah, it does seem like trying to put out a fire with gasoline.
Right. You might fix one problem, but create a whole bunch of new ones.
Yeah.
And then there's the center on budget and policy priorities. And they're basically saying, haven't we seen this movie before? Remember those 2017 tax cuts? They promised the same kind of benefits.
Yeah, and they didn't quite pan out the way they were supposed to, did they? At least that's what the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities is arguing. Instead of helping average Americans, it just made the rich richer.
Exactly. So now the question is, if Trump's 2024 plan is based on those same ideas, are we in for a repeat? Are these tax cuts, especially those corporate ones, really going to help everyone? Or are they just going to benefit a select few?
And possibly leave everyone else footing the bill.
Potentially. It's something we all need to think about.
It's about looking at your own situation, your own paycheck, your own expenses, and asking yourself, is this actually going to help me? And those Reddit threads, they really highlight how much people are paying attention to this stuff. They're feeling the effects of these policies, and they're looking for answers.
They want to know what's going to happen with the national debt, with their wages, with the cost of living. They want to know if their lives are going to get better or worse.
It's a good reminder that this isn't just theoretical. We're talking about real people's lives here.
It is. It's about putting food on the table, saving for the future, feeling secure. And that's why it's so important to stay informed, to keep asking those tough questions, to not just accept what we're being told.
Exactly. Because ultimately, we all have a role to play in shaping the economy. It's not just up to the politicians.
That's right. It's about being informed voters, making our voices heard, and holding our leaders accountable.
That's what we're all about here on The Deep Dive, giving you the information you need to understand these complex issues and make informed decisions. We've thrown a lot at you today, so now it's your turn to take this information, do your own digging, and decide what kind of future you want to see.